pull up a cup of coffee, and let's get this party started.
We're the uplines you didn't know you needed, but now you have.
This is the podcast for women who are building a direct sales business, but want to do it the right way.
Melanie has a decade of experience in direct sales. She's earned the top in industry 4 years in a row and has grown a multi-million-dollar organization. She gives a no BS approach to leadership, recruitment, and organization.
And my bestie Katie has you covered with the rest. From the relationships, the do's and don'ts of branding, her content has been viewed by millions. She doesn't just talk the talk, but she teaches people how to create an intentional brand too.
All right, let's get this party started.
Well, hey everybody, welcome back to the Direct Sales Done Right podcast. It is Melanie and Katie, and we are your hosts, and we're excited to have you here for our next episode. But before we dive in, we want to give a little bit of client love and some reviews of the week. So if you've been listening to the podcast, you notice we've actually added this in because we want to make sure that other women in the social selling, direct sales space, they know about the podcast. So if you can do us a huge favor and head on over to iTunes, leave us a rating and review. It helps our podcast get found by, again, other women in direct sales. We pick a listener every single week to read that iTunes review. And this week it is Bianca Schillard. And she said, I was introduced to the Direct Sales Done Right podcast through my upline, and I swear by their tips and tricks to working my business. I purchased their planner, time blocker, and I'm working my way through their academy as well. On my hard days, I reflect and listen and get right back into the game. Thankful for these ladies and all of their mentorship. That's like the best. That is the best review ever. We're so glad that you are using our tools and resources and are seeing success. So thank you so much for that. And then we also like to shout out our listener of the week. And what the listener of the week is, it's somebody that actually screenshots the podcast episode as they're listening to it and then tags us, the Direct Sales Done Right podcast. You can even tag us at Chic Influencer. We like it when you tag Katie and Melanie as well, because we like to see what your top takeaways are. So if you do that, we'll actually pick one listener every week and we'll do a little private coaching session right inside of DMs. You can ask us a question, we'll answer it for you. And that is just us saying thank you for sharing the podcast and what you love. So this past week, our listener from social media is Megan Hopkins, and her handle is at Meg's Moments. So Megan, if you can send us a DM at Chic Influencer, we'll be happy to give you a mini coaching session for that.
So I love it. So this week on the podcast, we are talking again about recruitment, and for those of you who didn't catch last week's episode, we gave the definition of recruitment. When it comes to direct sales, recruitment refers to onboarding team members who are going to help you in sharing the opportunity as well as the products that you use. And really through direct sales, you can earn commissions in two main ways. The first way is through your own commissions and sales of the product, but the second is through building an organization who is seeing success. That really is another way that you can build it. And so last week's episode, we really put Melanie on the hot seat. And when we put her on the hot seat, we asked her very specific questions about some strategy, but also some things that make people uncomfortable when it comes to building an organization. And going back to that episode, I really think that one thing that I've seen over my 11 years of experience in the direct sales space is there is such a parallel between talking about the business opportunity and then the products that you have. But most people feel really confident when they're talking about the products because they love the products. They've seen success with the products. They've experienced them in a way where maybe they have a testimonial or their clients have testimonials, or they just genuinely love it. So that seems to be something that just feels a little bit more natural. But when it comes to talking about the business, there is a little bit more of this feeling of like, I don't know if I'm equipped. I don't know if I quite have the skill set to be able to build a team because maybe I haven't seen my own success or I don't feel successful yet. Or maybe I just don't know that I am a natural leader, which of course we talk about here on the Direct Sales Done Right podcast. But for whatever reason, that can be a real sticking point for a lot of people in the direct sales industry. So we're going to hit it head on when we talk about what to do when you don't necessarily feel confident posting because you just haven't had that level of success you want.
Yeah. And I think back to when we both first started in direct sales, we were building a team and talking about the opportunity long before we had the team and long before we had the even the success stories from people that we were mentoring to kind of put in our back pocket with that vote of confidence. And so one of the strategies that we're going to talk about today has been something that has really helped us to get out there and talk more about the opportunity. But to kind of set the stage, when I look back in the last 11 years, in that first 12 months, I think there's always a turning point in your business where you say, all right, I'm willing to actually talk about the business because I actually understand why. I see how it's going to actually improve my life, how it's going to help me get closer to my financial goals or the recognition goals or whatever it is that you're working towards. And for me, that was being on a team call where I heard the guest speaker talk about how he had been able to buy a home and he had been able to take his family on vacation and they'd been able to start creating some additional savings. And so here I was sitting in our little townhouse that we were kind of bursting at the seams. And I had all these visions and dreams for the house that I wanted our kids to grow up in and our summer vacations I wanted to take as a family. And we weren't able to do any of those things. And I couldn't see a different way. I just thought, okay, this is how life is. You just go to college, you get a 4-year degree, and then you struggle for the rest of your life. And so when he started talking, it was like the light bulb went on. And so I was like, I want that. I'm going to create that income. And so now the desire became really strong, and it became stronger than the fear of what people were going to think that I was growing this team. And so without knowing what I was doing, I just started sharing all the wins I was having along the way. I can remember, and you talk about this too, getting the t-shirt in the mail for helping 3 people get started on their journey. I wore that shirt and held up the shake. I mean, I actually just popped up in my memories not too long ago. And I talked about earning the free shirt for helping people and that I'd do it even if I didn't get a free shirt because I loved it. And then the groceries, talking about the groceries, the selfie I took with the paper bags in the trunk, I just started to talk about all the wins I was having along the way, even though there were women in the company that were making lots more money than I was and had bigger teams than I was able to put my blinders on. And that's not something that most people are able to do. They kind of get in their own head about why would they sign up with me when they could sign up with her,
Yeah. Well, I also think to that point, the one thing that I have learned about recruitment and success in recruitment, aside from confidence, is the way people connect to your content. And people relate to content where they see themselves in it. So when you're looking at your brand and what you're saying about it, sure, when you're posting these big wins and these big goals and all the big things that you've been able to accomplish, those things look great to other people. But the small wins are the ones that most people can see themselves in. So even though I had built a really significant income through the direct sales opportunity, the type of content that I created that would bring people in the most was getting the groceries paid for.
Yeah.
To this day, even if I would talk about the direct sales opportunity, which I don't anymore, but if I would be talking about the direct sales opportunity, it would still be about the fact that I got the groceries paid for. Because the emotion tied to going into a grocery store and feeling that pit in your stomach and going, I just don't know if there's enough in the bank account. If I have to charge this, my husband and I are probably going to fight about finances again. That emotion, you still conjure up feelings for it. So it's still very relatable for yourself. You can picture yourself living in that. But that is usually where the audience who would connect with this message, that's where they're sitting. They're not necessarily sitting in the, man, I could really live in a big house right now. That would be really great. They want that relatability factor. So I think it's worth mentioning that.
I think it is. So, to kind of kick this off too is you are already qualified where you're at. You're already successful enough and you are qualified to talk about the business opportunity. And now it's just actually starting to create the brainstorm that allows you to begin to put this content out there. And like we talked last week in the last week's podcast episode, I talked about the marketing strategy, right? That you have this period of time where we're actually talking about the business. And so one of the things that we actually want to walk you through today is part of the Rockstar Recruitment course. And it's an activity that have shared it in multiple multiple places now, and it's the blessings of the business.
Yeah.
And it's actually something that you came up with and from your notebook years ago, and I'm sure you still have it. And I can picture the page. And this is really how we get you into the frame of mind to start posting about the business opportunity. And so anytime you feel stuck and you're like, I don't know what to say, I don't know what to do, this is what we actually start you out to get that creativity going and build that bank of stories. So let's talk about what it is.
Yeah. So taking you back to a season of my business where I had seen pretty great success, and then things just started to change a little bit. I started to see some difference in my organization, and it started to really ruffle my own confidence, my belief in the business, my belief in myself as a leader. And first of all, I can tell you that these things happen. When you've been in direct sales long enough, you will always see an ebb and a flow. You will always see people come in and go out. You serve people for a reason, a season, and then some people you're fortunate enough to serve for a lifetime. And so with that being said, I just remember on one occasion, I was sitting down with my journal, and I just had my Bible out, and I was just like, I'm so angry about things in this business, and my mindset was just really negative. And I was like, I need to go back to a space of gratitude. So really, as cliche as it sounds, gratitude really does change everything. And so I wrote down in my journal, what are the blessings of the business? And my brain tends to compartmentalize things a little bit. So I wrote down 5 key areas. In my business, I was in wellness. So the physical, then I wrote down about the financial. I wrote down the emotional, the spiritual, and then the mental. So I wrote down these 5 key areas. And then in that piece of paper, I just wrote down short snippets, little sentences of ways that being a part of the direct sales company I was a part of had blessed my life. And then I had a whole page full. I really let myself just kind of journal it out, write it down, feel it. And I was noticing it was positioning my heart a little bit differently. So I was starting to feel physically and mentally better about it. But then I took it one step further. I started to think about the blessings of the business for people that I had a direct impact on within the organization. And so I wrote down how this opportunity had blessed their lives. And I'll give you one example. One of the coaches in my organization, she had lost a child, and it was really awful. It was a horrible experience. And that happened, and the entire organization rallied around her, and everybody was wearing just these, we called it Every Sweat Matters t-shirts, and just really rallied around this idea of helping her and supporting her in just knowing that she wasn't battling this sadness and this sorrow alone. And then we went on to proceed to raise funds for one of the nonprofits that she became kind of associated with as well. And it was really powerful. Was it directly tied to my own finances? No. But was it a blessing to her, to our organization, to gosh only knows how many other people who were now introduced to this nonprofit or to this movement of Every Sweat Matters? Who knows? Who actually knows? But I do know that seeing a blessing come from where you were viewing a burden, when you start to see things as blessings instead of burdens, it really does change who you are as a human. And so I look back at that and having a sheet of paper where I had my blessings, but then the second part of it was seeing blessings so much bigger than just finances. It really changed the way that I looked at it. And so I would encourage you, really, step one is to get out a journal. And no matter if you've been in the business for a week, or if you've been in the business for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. We have one client who's been in her business for 23 years, which is crazy.
Yeah.
No matter how long you've been in it, I really encourage you to get out a journal. And on one side, write down the blessings of the business and how your life, your direct life, has been impacted from it. And I always focus on those key areas. Yours might be a little bit different. Financial, physical, spiritual, mental, and emotional. And then on the other side, I would write down blessings of the business that either those you know directly or those that you actually have seen in the business who have been blessed, and just see that those things, those are real things. Those are lives that are impacted because of the direct sales opportunity. And that's very powerful.
It is very powerful.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm supposed to answer the next question, but I'm actually we're both gonna answer it.
Okay.
But how did you take that brainstorm and then how did you actually turn that into the content?
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. So the first thing that I want to mention with that is I had to believe it.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about this in the next podcast episode. We're going to talk about two things that you really need, and that's energy and empathy. And I'll talk in more detail about the specifics of it. But first of all, coming from a place of gratitude positions your heart differently and allows you to speak of it in a very energetic way where you physically show up differently. Your words change, the way that you share, the reels that you do, the body language that you show up with positions you to be somebody that people look to and go, I want a little bit of what she is having. And I always use the analogy, if you've ever seen Harry when Harry met Sally. I'm looking at John right now when Harry met Sally, and she's kind of at the table and she's having this moment where she's explaining like what it should actually feel like. And I'm not even going to reference what it is because this is G-rated. But this little old lady across the seat goes, I want what she's having. Energy speaks for itself. Energy speaks for itself. So when you're posting about it, you want to think, okay, if I'm looking at the other side of this, I want to showcase a blessing. I want to show somebody who is sitting on the other side of the screen how this same opportunity could bless them physically, financially, spiritually, emotionally. But I have to speak to the problem they're sitting with right now. One of the obvious ones for me, one of the first ones for me in showcasing my own experience was talking about the pain point of going to the grocery store and physically feeling that pit in my stomach of knowing that, or not being sure if I had enough in our bank account to be able to pay for the groceries. And the feeling when the cashier looked at me and said, I'm sorry, insufficient funds. You know, people feel that. They can feel themselves in that situation. And then to be able to say, this is where I am because you also then have applied empathy. In the other experience where I showcased just this Every Sweat Matters movement, the energy that came from the experience of being something so much bigger than yourself, that is movement based. So there is this feeling of I am in something that is bigger than just me. I am in something and part of something that is truly changing people's lives. Again, there is an energy piece to it. But I also have to be bold enough to invite people. It is one thing to show up and show your team working out, or it is one thing to show up and show the earned vacation that you have. But if people don't actually feel like they're invited into what you're doing, they're not going to just usually they're not going to come out and ask. Of course, sometimes they are. But again, big wins, small wins. It like people relate to when they feel seen and when they feel like they can speak to you.
Yeah. And it might feel a little unnatural at the beginning as you start to talk more about the business, because I know that it is. I just know that it, especially like when you first started talking about the product and inviting people to try the products, it felt uncomfortable. It was not something that you had ever done before. But again, if we aren't willing to share the stories of how our lives have been significantly impacted, it's going to be really hard to actually connect with people. And when we talk about the strategy to this, we're really going back to kind of two parts, right? It's when we make that switch and we say, all right, it is the time in the month where I am now going to focus on building my team. And I've set a goal to bring in 2 business builders this month. So I'm going to get out my blessings of the business and I am going to say to myself, all right, I'm leading up to my enrollment period for my team or my business builders boot camp. And so what stories am I going to tell? What do I feel like is going to resonate with my audience the most? I want to make sure that I'm addressing a problem that they have. It may be the insufficient funds, or it might be that they're arguing about the bills, or, you know, it might be the desire to have a job that actually does give you joy and fulfillment. And so you tell the story about, you know, how this particular job brings you so much passion and fulfillment. And you actually show the before to the after. I actually have a private coaching client right now who is in the medical field, and on her opportunity calls, she has her before photo and it is her completely drained and exhausted from working in the hospitals to how she feels as a health coach. And her face is bright and her skin has color, and she talks about the joy that that brings. That speaks to a desire that probably her ideal client is walking through right now, being in the healthcare industry. And then you have to be able to say, this is the solution that I have to offer. And that solution is not just like, here, this is what life can be, but it now is, this is the story. This is my blessing. Let me actually teach you how to do it too. Come inside, work with me, and I will teach you the steps to building this business. So it's actually telling people that you have a mentorship opportunity or you're willing to work with them one-on-one. And it's doing it during that enrollment period, that 7 to 14 days where you're really talking about the business. Mm-hmm. And I find that I always go back and add to the blessings of the business as something new happens in my life. I like to keep adding to it. It becomes twofold. It's a reminder of why you're doing what you're doing. It helps you to create content. But it also is your book of proof that you've got these wins along the way too. It's just this reminder. It's like you say about the milestones. It's just the reminder of the journey that you're on and the succession that you are having over time.
Yeah. And the only other point that I would add to that is people get scared to repeat themselves, or they feel like, oh, I already shared this story, or people have already heard this. That's not really the way to look at it. Right. Sometimes I still would tell the story of how I built a direct sales business, just wanting to get the groceries paid for over and over and over and over again. Because remember, it's not about you. It's about the person on the other side of the screen.
Yeah.
And so you kind of want to remember that too. All right. So we've given them a lot of tips and strategies when it comes to blessings of the business. But let's say that you are one of those business owners who is ready to make an investment in learning how to recruit a solid organization. Can you talk for a couple minutes about next steps?
Sure. So next steps are you need to join the Rockstar recruitment course. It is open for enrollment, and it is actually, we're coming up on the close of that enrollment on March 14th. So you need to get into the course. We'll drop all of the information in the show notes. And I have created this course with so much love, so much heart, experience over the past 11 years. And it really is a step-by-step, how do I build a successful, thriving team that is actually duplicating, how to position yourself as a business mentor, how to know who your ideal team member is, everything from how to run opportunity events to the emails, to the posts, to the entire marketing strategy, how to have the conversations, and so much more. It's all available to you inside of the course that you get lifetime access to a Facebook community where you can network with other women in the industry and also learn from me. We do live Q&A sessions as well. And it really, the testimonials from the first round of this course were just out of this world. And I know that if you have a desire in your heart to build a team, that this is the place that you need to be inside of the course. So we hope to see you there. Again, all of the information is listed in the show notes.
Yes. And we also love to end with some client love. I just want to say how grateful and blessed I feel to be a part of the Rockstar recruitment course. I'll be honest in saying I went back and forth for many months before signing up for one of Melanie's paid courses. And then I took the leap, and I am so glad I did. The amount of content has been amazing. I feel like I just received so much when it comes to our investment, and almost feel like I should have paid more. Thank you, Melanie and Chic Influencer, for providing this amazing course. I have learned so much, and I'm noticing I need to tweak some things to make my business even better. Thank you, April, for sharing your client love. Give them a truth bomb of the week to close us out with.
A truth bomb of the week. You are already equipped to build the team that you desire. You already have it. You don't need more success. You don't need more income. You don't need a bigger title. You are already a leader. And I want to challenge you to go out there today and make the bold post and send the bold invites, because you are actually the only barrier to your success.
All right, guys, we'll see you next time.
All right, so if you loved today's episode, make sure you head over to wherever you listened to the episode today and leave us a rating and review. And also take a little screenshot and tag us on Chic Influencer. We'll feature you in our stories. Plus, we'd love to get your feedback and hear from our listeners.
Until next week, let's make chic happen.